As writers, we spend a lot of our lives working at high speed. To be honest, this applies to all areas of life, not just writing. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. When it comes to writing, maybe we've got deadlines. Maybe we are just gripped by creative inspiration. These are good reasons to work quickly. A lot has been said about hustle culture though. I'm not really going to expand on that here because that isn't what this video is about. If you've spent any time in the author community though, you will certainly have seen a preoccupation with word counts, with tracking, with deadlines, and with writing as quickly as possible. Like I said, there is nothing inherently wrong with those things. They certainly have a place. But recently I have been experimenting with something else. I'm calling this slow drafting, and it is exactly as it sounds. I've been writing slowly a little bit every day. I've talked in other videos about how I like to use this method. I'm not a big binge writer. I've made videos talking about how 10k days and big challenges like that don't work for me. So for years now, my process has been to work a little and often. But right now, I'm taking the process even further, and this is where we get to this specific process of slow drafting. For the last couple of years, I have been working on and off on an epic fantasy. The first draft of this book is probably going to be around 200,000 words. So far, I've written about 35,000 words. Now, it has not taken me 2 years of solid work to accomplish that. This is a project that I come and go from quite frequently. When I am working on it though, my goals are very small compared to the other projects I have going on. I'm tending to write no more than 500 words a day. My usual goal is more like 1,000 to 1,500. So this is definitely slower progress than usual. And because it's such a massive book, it's going to take me a really long time to finish it. I'm estimating probably that the first draft won't be done until the end of 2021. So you might hear that and think, what on earth are you doing? Just sit down and get on with it. There are days when I felt exactly the same, but there are reasons I've chosen this slow drafting process for this particular book. And there are also reasons why it is working really well for me right now. As I've said, this is a big epic fantasy. There is an awful lot to think about. I've done a certain amount of brainstorming and outlining. I spent quite a long time on that before I wrote a single word. However, I am also taking the time to plan as I go. Really, the world and the plot is expanding with every new scene and every chapter. And I'm really enjoying having the time to think this through. I've been giving myself the space to consider each scene and how it fits into the larger whole. To think about the repercussions of the events I'm introducing into the book, and how these might play out in the rest of the story. Now, to a certain extent, I would always do this with a draft. I will always be adding to my brainstorming and my outlining as I go through a book. But here I am just really taking it to the next level. There's also the fact that the physical act of writing has really slowed down for me in this book. Now, I type pretty quickly. I've got a lot of years of experience of writing first drafts. But this time the process is very different. I have been giving really careful consideration to almost every line I write. I've been thinking through how the characters would react, what they would say. I've been giving a lot of thought to word choice and the little details I introduce into the world as I go along. Obviously, this is making the process very slow. A lot of this stuff I would usually work out in edits, but this time I'm introducing it into the drafting process. So overall, this slow drafting has been really enjoyable. I feel like I'm getting to know my characters and my world so much better than I have done in other books, in other first drafts. Partly that's because I'm taking so much time to world build and to plan as I go along. That is definitely helping. But I'm also just spending more physical time with these characters. There's a lot of sitting and thinking and just being in their heads and in their situations. I should say, of course, that there are some downsides to slow drafting. I've definitely found that when writing slowly, it can be much harder to maintain consistency in your plot. If it has taken you 6 months to write 30,000 words, then you will invariably have forgotten more of the plot of the beginning of the book by the time you reach that 30,000 mark. And of course, when the book is 200,000 words long, this problem is just amplified. I've been doing my best to keep comprehensive notes as I go along, but ultimately I just know I am going to forget things, and there are a lot of issues that will need sorting out in edits. I also wanted to bring up the topic of motivation. Now, this particular book is very much a passion project for me. I don't know if it will ever be published. It is just, as I have said before, the book of my heart right now. Because of that, it's been relatively easy for me to maintain my motivation. But I think in a lot of cases, it would not be. Typically, the best thing for me to do is to harness my enthusiasm from the start of a project and just get through the first draft as quickly as possible. Obviously, I'm not doing that here. If it was a book I loved even slightly less, I think slow drafting would not work for me. I would just run out of steam before I got to the end. There are definitely some advantages to slow drafting though. For one thing, it is giving me the time to work on lots of different projects at once. This is something I really like to do. This epic fantasy is kind of going on in the background of my main indie publishing books. I have other series in progress that I want to wrap up more quickly, but the epic fantasy is just slipping into the cracks at the end of the day usually. And that leads to a wider point about this slow drafting. I think the idea of building up a writing routine and planning to write an entire book can be a bit intimidating for newer writers. Particularly if you've got a day job or school or kids or all three, it becomes very difficult to work out where writing is going to fit into your life. But I think just accepting that it's going to take you a long time to finish a draft can really help. Then you start looking for the little moments when you can draft. Maybe you're writing a few lines on your phone when you're on the bus or the train on the way to work, or you're waiting to pick your kids up from something, or you're even just waiting for the kettle to boil. Anything that allows you to get a little bit of writing done and to build it into your daily routine is something that is A, going to help you get work done when you might otherwise not have done, but B, makes it easier to stick to. You absolutely do not need to be able to carve out an entire day to write 10,000 words to be a successful writer. Ultimately, writing is a long game. Consistency is what will get you to your goals better than anything else. No, it might not be fast, and you might feel like you're being left behind by everyone else around you churning out words. But being consistent and just sticking to it will get you to the end of a draft the same as if you were writing 10,000 words in a day. This isn't a race. You are not trying to create your books faster than everyone else around you. As I have said so many times before, writing is a craft where you really just need to keep your eyes down on your own work. Worrying about what everyone else is doing will not help you at all. So those are a few of my current thoughts on slow drafting. This has been a really interesting experiment for me, and I've enjoyed it so much that I actually don't want to speed up the process of writing this epic fantasy. I want to keep doing a little bit at a time. It is a far cry from the world of zero drafts and fast drafting and really just pushing through to the end. And it may be a process that I never use on any other book. I think it might be unique to this particular brand of very slow epic fantasy, for me at least. but it might be a process that works for you. So I would love to know whether you are a fast drafter, a slow drafter, or somewhere in between. Or maybe you're like me and it really depends on the project. Please feel free to let me know down in the comments. I would love to continue the conversation there. I've now got some slow drafting to get back to. So keep writing everyone, and I'll see you next time.